Hey, welcome to another 20 Minutes with Dan and Keith. He's Dan. I'm still Keith. We are glad to not see you, but be welcomed into your homes and have an opportunity to chat with you for a few minutes. What's going on, Dan?
Oh, let's see. Hey, did you know I'm a granddad?
Folks, all I've been seeing...
I'm sorry.
You know, Vivian, I love you. You're great. But it's all I've seen for the last 48 hours.
You want to see some? You want to see some new pictures?
Somebody save me! Was it blink twice if you're in trouble?
Yeah.
No, but you're a granddad.
Oh,
you should indulge in that.
I know. If you're wondering if I'm ever going to give it a rest, the answer was no. I'm not giving it a rest.
I wouldn't expect him to, and I know you guys don't either. Many of you are proud grandparents, I'm sure.
Okay. What's new with you guys?
I tell you what. The other day, remember I ran in and told you it was snowing outside.
Yeah.
A couple days ago.
And the month just keeps getting weirder.
2020, folks. Snow in April. It didn't last long, but it was here for a little bit.
I know. I thought you were joking. I ran outside.
No.
And it was true. It was snow in April.
Yeah.
But no. I mean, what is new? I mean, good grief! It's the more puzzles.
Yes.
More
puzzles.
More binging. We did Netflix show.
The youth group did an online talent show on Zoom. That was fun. We had
that would be interesting.
Piano playing, some sketchbooks, and art shown. We had a contortionism with the broom. It was we even had
I'm curious about
lots of interesting stuff.
Whoa. Let's go back to the contortionist with the broom. What?
Yeah.
What?
Anna Hope.
Okay.
Anna Hope. She had a broom and she did some contortionism. She bent herself around the broom.
Amazing.
So, yeah.
I'm telling you, the talents of people never cease to amaze me.
Yeah. It's an amazing.
So did y'all have a winner, or was it just?
We didn't have a winner.
Okay.
It was just fun.
Just display your talent.
Everybody do something to pass the time. So it was fun.
Good.
So what are we going to talk about today?
Okay. We had someone emailed us or texted us. I don't remember. But they asked the question: How do you guys? Will you guys address your approach to setting up a Bible study with someone? And how do you approach it to initiate a Bible study? And how do you what is your methodology for Bible study? And I said, man, that's a great question.
That's sometimes just starting.
Yes,
is often the hardest thing. How do I get started?
Yeah, it is.
So what do you say to that?
Well, before I say that, and tell you kind of the process that I've been, that I have favored over the last several years. Let me emphasize that when it comes to personal Bible study, and we'll talk really more about this in a minute. But there's a lot of different methodologies, and there's no right and there's no wrong. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. There's a lot of great tools out there, but when it comes to how I might approach someone, when I get to know them a little bit, and I know there's some approaches where you're kind of cold calling and door knocking. Used to be, that's not as popular as it used to be. Most people don't answer their doors now. I don't answer my door.
Yeah.
But so usually it's still through when you build a relationship with someone. You're starting to develop a relationship with someone. And what I have experienced most success with, Keith, is I just ask someone, I usually say, hey, listen, I would love to share with you and talk with you about some spiritual matters. And I was wondering if you would give me 1 hour. I won't take more than 1 hour of your time. And, if after that hour you wanted to talk some more, great. But if after that hour you decided, hey, listen, I enjoyed it. Thanks, Dan. I appreciate it. But I don't think I'm good. Then hey, great, no pressure, but I just ask them for 1 hour.
1 hour.
Yeah.
I think that's, and I liked what you said earlier about relationships, and about how there's different approaches and no rights or wrongs. One of the things that we tell the teachers going into the classroom is that everybody has a different style.
Oh, absolutely.
You can't always teach like somebody else.
Right. That's right. That's exactly
because
right.
you try and you end up failing because you're not that person. So you got to find your own. You got to find your own style.
That's right.
But also that it's kind of working with someone and having a study with someone. When you get to know them, you can start to understand how to do it better. I know you don't parent kids the same way.
That's right. Exactly.
You get to know each one, and it's a little different. And I think it's the same way because it is a relationship heavy type of thing when you're studying.
Right.
But 1 hour.
Yep. 1 hour.
Why again 1 hour?
Well, the reason
a lot of these things have several series or 13 parts or.
Yeah, a lot of the methods that are out there, the evangelistic tools, do have it's maybe a 5-part video or a 5-part kind of correspondence course or a 5-part worksheet or a 6-part or an 8-part, and those are great. But what I have kind of discovered and gravitated toward is the reason I asked for 1 hour, and that's it. I've discovered that a lot of people are willing to give you 1 hour. I don't want them to think that, I'm asking for. I don't want them to think, how much time is this really going to take?
Yeah.
If I say yes, is he going to expect, this to go on for who knows how long? I don't want them to wonder about those questions. I want them to know up front what their time commitment is. And a lot of people are, I think, especially in our world where everybody's really hurried.
Yeah.
Except right now for the last month, but where everybody normally is, just on the treadmill, run, and but most people, they don't want or they may, but a lot of people would much rather. I think they're going to be more responsive to to an hour. It's kind of like I wrote a series of books a few years back, and they were really small books. And people go, "Well, why didn't you write?" And I had this one publisher who really wanted 13 lessons, because of the quarter system.
Yeah.
And I really didn't want that at all. And I wanted something that someone could give to their friends, and it wasn't so intimidating, this big book.
Sure.
It was something small, something that they could go, okay, yeah, I think I can get through that. I think I can read that. It won't take me much time. And so they didn't want to, when you're asking someone to invest time until you kind of build their interest up, a lot of people don't want to give a whole lot of time, but they're willing to give a short amount of time. And so when I go, hey, would you give me 1 hour? After that, it's your choice, but if you'll just give me 1 hour. And a lot of people are responsive to that.
And I think as you're talking about that, I think that also helps people realize that you're serious. Because all the time, hey, do you want to study? That's kind of open-ended.
Yeah.
And not that that's bad to say that, but just to say, hey, do you want to study? They don't have a time frame, and it's just like, yeah, I'll study with you. And when you say 1 hour, you're already looking at, hey, I want to study with you, and I want to give you an hour of my time. Are you willing to give me an hour of your time? Yeah. And you kind of enter into a more meaningful conversation.
Yep,
so I think that's very
right.
helpful.
Yep. I think you're absolutely right. And I found, like I said, that most people are pretty responsive to that, especially when they get to know you.
Yeah.
When you get to know someone, I've noticed two things. Number one, people do like to talk about spiritual things. And number two, if they like you, they're willing to give you an hour. And so that's my approach. Again, a lot of people, have different approaches, but I have found, I gravitate toward that one because I found it to be helpful. Would you give me 1 hour? There's something on my heart that I would like to talk with you about, some spiritual things that are on my heart that I like to share with you. And if you give me 1 hour, if you don't want to, that's fine. So I can change our relationship. I make sure they know that too.
Yeah.
Listen, if you don't want to do it, I want you to know you can say no to me, and it won't change how I feel about you. I'll still like you. We'll still be friends. And
That's important.
Yeah, it is important. I don't.
You don't want to ever manipulate someone into Bible study.
Exactly. I don't
not,
want.
not a good place to start.
It's not a good place to start. So I want them to know that I'm not trying to take advantage of our friendship and trying to manipulate them to a place that they don't want to go. Look, I'm going to be your friend whether you want to go down this road or not. So I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to respect your answer. And so that's how I typically do it. Get to know someone, and after you get to know them a little bit, and you have some kind of relationship, don't be afraid to say, hey, listen, I would love to talk with you about some spiritual things that are really important to me that are on my heart. And would you be willing to give me 1 hour? 1 hour to do it. Don't be afraid to say you'd rather not. You're not interested. That's okay. It won't change how I feel about you. You'll still be my friend, and we'll still have the same kind of relationship that we do now. And but if you give me just 1 hour, after that you can decide if you want to keep talking about these things or continue the discussion and conversation. Mm-hmm. Hey, we'll do it. If you don't, that's okay too.
And that's kind of built in there. That at the end of the hour, they're naturally either going to say, "Hey, this has been great, but it's enough," or that hour, hopefully, is going to cause them to ask some questions that they think, well, maybe I'd like to do this a little more. And we keep saying friend. Right. We keep saying friend, but this is true for family members.
That's
too.
Exactly right.
So many of us have family members that but it's always awkward.
Right.
Because, you're going to see them, a couple times a year at different family things. And, well, how do I approach it? If you just say, hey, could we chat for an hour about in that approach, then maybe that makes it a little less awkward.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And so a couple of things else I will say is when you tell them that, when you say...
You got to stick to it.
Yes, that's it. That's one of them. So when I say, can I have an hour? One of the things I don't do, I make sure they know when I say an hour, I mean an hour. Sometimes we talk in generalities. Hey, you got an hour? And it really don't mean an hour. It means whatever. But no, when I say, can I have 1 hour of your time?
Yes.
And I mean that. I won't go over an hour.
Specific.
So I make sure they know I'm not talking in generalities. I'm talking in specifics. And then, like you just said, you stick to it. I've been studying with somebody before, and we'll get it. I won't get as far as I wanted to get because, he or she they're asking some questions, and we're kind of going back and forth. In an hour, we'll come up on an hour. And I'll say, hey, listen, I told you that I would not take more than 1 hour of your time. And we're about there. And so, do you want to talk about it a little bit more? Or, or if you want to, we can keep talking a little bit about now. Or we can set up another time to talk about it. Or if you think you're good and you just, not interested in continuing this conversation, that's great too. Whatever you want. So I stick to it. I make sure that when I tell them an hour, I make sure it's an hour.
Where were you at the last time I went to a timeshare? I needed you as my sales guy. Anyway.
Hey, listen though. One other thing that I'll say about that is at the end of that hour, I don't completely leave it to them to say, hey, will you come back? I will pose the question. I'll say, hey, well, listen, thank you for giving me this hour. I really enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it.
You respect their time.
I respect their time. And then I ask them, I say, now, do you want to talk about it some more? Or think about it? I usually say this. I don't put them on the spot right there. Again, I really try to respect people, and I don't want to make them feel manipulated. I say, hey, listen, I'll be back in touch with you. I'll holler at you, I'll text you, I'll email you or something to call you. And think about it. If you want to get together and continue this conversation, There's some other things I'd love to show you as we're dealing with this. But like I said, I want you to know it's your choice. And so be thinking about if you want to continue the conversation or not. If you want to, I'd love to. But again, if you don't think you want to, that's okay too. And I reaffirm that it's okay, that it's their choice. But I don't just say, this, all right, thanks for letting me come and be with you. I'm going to tell them that I'm going to be following up and asking them if they want to continue. But it's okay to say no.
Right.
So those two things. Respect your, once you say an hour, if they give it to you, respect that. Mm-hmm. And number two, follow that up to see if they want to continue it some way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, those are important things to think about and to go in with. And again, it's getting started that is often the hard time. So
that's exactly right.
So if you just, make the ask to somebody and say, hey, we're good friends. We haven't, maybe you haven't spoken about spiritual things, or just say, hey, would you mind sitting down with me for an hour and chatting about it?
Yeah.
That gets you started.
Yep.
That gets you started.
Absolutely. And again, when you say that, make sure they know it won't take more than an hour. And I had a friend once who decided to take this approach. He had a son, a teenage son, and they had been together. They were real close. This son had a friend, and they kind of were all close as a family. And one time he said to his son's friend, hey, listen, you come over here and we watch sports together, and we have a great time hanging out. He said, would you give me a little time, about an hour of your time? He said, because the most important thing in my life is Christ and spiritual things. And I'd love to share with you some things that are on my heart. And would you be willing to do that? And the young man, about 17 or 18, said sure, because he had a lot of respect for him. Mm-hmm. And, ended up baptizing him into Christ. It's a lot of times people, if you ask them, if they'll give you a little bit of time, the answer is yeah. And so I have found that to be, an approach that I favor.
Yeah, and it's a low risk, low evasive approach. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes, like that situation with a young man, and many of you can probably think of situations like this, sometimes we answer for people before we ask.
Oh yeah, go with that. I like that. That's right.
We are really good friends with someone. Everybody can probably think. I can think. I'm sure you probably think of someone that you're really good friends with that you've never said anything about spiritual matters or Bible study, or maybe their views are different, so you've just never approached it.
Yeah.
Because in your head, you've already answered the question, do you want to study with me? They're going to say no. So I'm not even going to ask it.
That is so true.
And that, I think, a lot of times, that's what keeps us from a situation like that where the young man said, yeah.
Yeah. That's right.
And then we're surprised. We're like,
that's right.
Whoa, did they just say yes?
That's right. Sometimes we actually think that, well, if they wanted to talk about spiritual things, they would bring it up.
Right.
And that's not true. That may be the case with some. And I've had people who say, hey, let me ask you something, because they know I'm a preacher and they,
right.
But no, don't assume that at all. Because a lot of times, like I said, people do like to talk about spiritual things. I've discovered that in 30 plus years of ministry. And sometimes they're just looking for an invitation and an opening to talk about spiritual things. I remember once, and this is a little bit different, but it's on the same vein. I remember when I was in college years ago in the 80s, mid-80s at Lipscomb, I had a Bible teacher who said, guys, sometimes people are just waiting for you to ask if they've ever thought about obeying the gospel of Christ, or thought about following Christ and putting him on in baptism. And they're just waiting. Nobody's asked them. And I thought, oh, surely not. I can't imagine that. So I went back to the dorm, and I was in the dorm, and my roommate had a brother, and he wasn't a Christian. Now, my roommate was, but his brother wasn't. He was kind of a quiet guy. And so it was shortly after that, and I'd been thinking about that. And it was shortly after that I found myself in the room with him by myself. And so I thought, I'm going to try it on him.
Application.
I'm going to try
Theory
it.
means application.
Yeah. And so I go, hey. And I called his name Jeff. I said, hey, Jeff, let me ask you, have you ever thought about obeying the gospel of Christ? Have you ever thought about following Jesus? And he looked at me and goes, yeah, I have thought about that. And so he was baptized. Just me asking him. Nobody had asked me. And so it's the same with Bible studies. Sometimes it's just, we just, like you said, assume that somebody's not going to do it.
Yeah.
But if you just ask, and again, if you ask, hey, it's something, you're not asking for this lifetime commitment or this major, major commitment, but hey, would you be willing to, let me talk to you about, for 1 hour, not more than 1 hour, about some things, spiritual things that are really on my heart. You'd be surprised at how many people go, sure. Yep.
Yeah. It takes you asking.
Absolutely.
Well, I tell you what,
Out of time already.
We just spent 20 minutes on how to ask, which, I guess maybe we needed this when we were younger, when it took us so long to ask Leola and Tara things. But asking, it's a big hurdle, and so we wanted to go over it.
That's right. You can't ever get to the study until you ask.
In next episode, how about we get to that study?
I love it.
Places that you like to start, questions you like to ask.
Yep.
Things you like
How
to get
you
the person
started,
thinking
yeah.
on. What happens during that hour?
Absolutely.
We talk about
I think a good idea maybe would be we can kind of do some role playing.
Yeah.
Kinda.
We'll do that next time.
Sounds good.
Stay safe out there, guys.
Take care.